Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to gather here today as lions and friends and guests. We pray a blessing on those that cannot be with us, a particular blessing for Tom Fulton as he struggles with cancer. We pray that the food we eat today will strengthen our bodies, increase our love for you and for each other. Amen.
Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maryland.
Our country is of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing.
And where my fathers died,
Land of thy pilgrims pride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring.
Bob, how many guests we have today?
President Lloyd, so Lions, yes, we have 3 guests today. Keith Stack. Where is Keith? Right
There he
here.
is.
Keith, all right. Okay, Bob, what's that say? No, I'm sorry, Bob, I can't read your hand right. Brought to us by, Mossman, Jim Mossman. Yes, please. And Mike Bowen brought us a guest. Carol Madden. Right there. Okay. Hi, Carol. All right, that's it for guests.
All right. Pat, you're up. Find us some of the people we haven't seen for a while.
We're gonna start with Kate.
Oh, okay, that's right. Let's start with Kate.
I believe this is the big reveal. Lion, what you doing?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, I wanted to go first because I want to give you guys plenty of time by the time it gets to you for a name. All of your names are out because we're having a girl.
Because I don't have anything. Okay. Let's easy name, Annie Oakley Dillinger. Sula, come forward. You're in training.
You're in training. Oh, that's right. Are you ready for this?
I was born ready.
All right, girl. All right. Speaking of making fun of people, how are you, Kurt? You good? All right. Have you delivered all your mail? Everything's good though? Oh, okay. Let's go over there.
All right.
We'll get the mail delivered here in a minute. How about Lion Gray?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, very, very happy dollar today. Mike and Anita Boland came back to see us today, as well as their Mike's caregiver, Carolyn.
is good to see you, darn it, you know? Let's see, why don't we go ahead and get Mike's happy dollar since we're right. What do you think? All right. Two, oh, must have got the insurance, the income tax refund, huh? No.
So Steve,
Yes,
are
sir.
you gonna be able to do tail twister next year?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions,
It should be.
I'm really happy to be here.
I'm starting to walk now, so.
Happy, but
Wonderful.
I wake up every morning and I'm just happy as can be. So anyway, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. Well, do what? Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So I don't know what else to say.
What's the name of this skinny? How's he doing?
He's doing pretty good.
Right on, good to hear. Do ya? Oh, good. You know, sometimes when people are sick, we end up bringing them meals and stuff. We could just stop by and give Mike a bad time. Okay? There you go. Bill Headline, how are you?
President Light, fellow Lions and guests, just a happy dollar. I got up graveyard and actually got up early enough to come in and do something. So good to be here.
Right on. Great to see you, man. Great to see you. Off the races? What do you think, Ken, really? Yeah, I think we should skip Ken also. I'm serious. There's gotta be somebody over here that we like and wanna hear. Oh, all right. Well, I know we'll do Ken, we'll do Ken.
Thanks, boy. Two happy bucks. For all of you that missed the excitement last Saturday, I have never in my life seen celebration of big people as the day was gonna be. We get up there and a guy showed up with a rifle. She said, everybody clear out of the way. He fired the shot and turned out pink. So the other happy buck is happy. Katie, thank you for the clean dog. They're cheaper buy stuff for the boys.
Oh, I'm pretty sure this one's gonna grow up needing a 4x4 truck. Mr. Jim Mossman, how have you been, sir?
I have a $20 bill here, and that should pay up for all the time I was in Mississippi. But I just want to announce that Dwayne and I started construction of our boat for the 4th of July. And hopefully, we'll have one line in there. And we've got Home Depot to give us $1,000 for the glue and paint.
Huh.
And I'm announcing we're going to be in first place.
Can't wait to make the graphics for that speedboat. That's gonna be fun. Hi, Terry, how are you, man?
Couple of happy dollars. President Lloyd, fellow Lions guests, yeah, couple of happy bucks. My report on Jim Reineke, he didn't come last week because he had low blood pressure for a while. And they took him into the emergency and gave him water or something there. If he drinks water, his blood pressure goes up. I thought it was just being around Eileen would put his blood pressure up. Eileen's doing well, so they're doing better. The other happy dollar is, have you noticed there's sun out there the last couple of days?
I don't know what that big ball in the sky is, but whatever. I guess they call it sun. I don't know.
Unless you got it off.
Pretty nice. Nice to have it up. What's your introduce, Brian?
All right, Ryan. Ryan.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, two happy bucks. We
He's extra happy.
This is another speak.
Stock market went up for a day.
Yeah.
Just today.
We started up league play yesterday against Columbia River, who took league championship, district championship, second in state, and won 7-1. So that was good.
Ooh.
We got spanked twice last week. And then our friends Cindy and Pat are sponsoring the baseball team this year. So
All right.
For that too. Thanks, guys.
Cool.
Man, happy to do it, man. See, there's some good to knowing us. Ryan Maryland, Past District Governor, how is things?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, so I have $3 here. This is a blessed dollar. We've been blessed with Tom Fulton for several years, and I know that our concerns are with Tom and Pat, so that dollar is just a, again, I'm blessed with his membership and his friendship. Next dollar is, there's so many fellow Lions here today that we haven't seen for a while, so we're just gonna lump it all up in $1. It's so good to see you. March Madness, how about those Gonzaga dogs? We're happy for that.
Wow.
All right, Lion Kurt.
Yay.
Like UCLA's left.
First of all, before I get to my, I got $5. So before I haven't started yet.
Lips are moving.
King Lion Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests. First, I want to deliver my dues. I sent it in and it keeps coming back. Apparently it's, you know, if a lawyer sends us something rejected.
Yeah.
So,
Are you trying to avoid interest?
yeah, I am. And, so I hand delivered it over here. Anyway, this is a $5 announcement. So, Cabaret is this Friday and Saturday. There's a Friday night show, Saturday night show. This club, for those that don't know it, for a couple of years, we sponsored the Cabaret. What Cabaret is we hire a national director. He's a great guy, Jamie Donegan. He comes here, he uses local talent, and he puts on basically a cabaret show. It's 2 hours long. And you'll get to see your friends and other community members up on stage. Al Palmer was on stage when we did it. You ran a genie out there.
Yeah, I was quite popular.
Actually, he did sing.
We raised $700 for him not to.
Yeah.
So this club has a history with the Cabaret. The Cabaret is going on this weekend. If you guys want to come down and see the show, through the Columbia Theater, all the proceeds are going to.
I know what it is.
Yeah.
Youth and family.
Thank you. Youth and family.
You got it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
And truly, Kurt uses the word talent very loosely.
Are you in it, Kurt?
If for those that really enjoy, especially those past performances, the 75-year-old group of ladies that tap dances, they're going to be there. Apparently, there's new things that jiggle. And whoa.
King Lion, fellow Lions and guests, I have a couple of happy dollars here. One of our past presidents in this club, that will remain unnamed right now, has a relationship blog. Okay. And I picked up a piece of advice from that relationship blog, and I wanted to pass it on to the gentleman. It's simply this. If you want to please your wife, post a nice, really nice picture of her in the kitchen at home and put a little note underneath it. Employee of the
It was not me. Now stop staring.
Yeah.
Mr. Sorensen, how are you, man? Excuse me, can we just, Leroy? Can you make a note in the secretary's handbook? Dick Sorensen has $2 happy.
Two happy. Whoa.
Page in a history book. President, fellow Lions and guests, I brought us here. He just moved in. He just moved in across the street. He's a Californian, but I'll excuse that.
That's why you moved there.
That could be a fact. That would be a fact.
Around now.
Yeah. But
Yes, he is.
so anyway, we're working on getting him in the club.
All right.
Very nice.
What was the other buck for?
I mean, you have to have an entire career to stay 1,000 miles away and then buy a house next to Dick Sorensen so that he's got a friend.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Reminding you, Eric, just because you don't have to sit. Sula escaped, did you see?
Yeah.
She escaped. She got to sit. Yeah. She got to sit back by the cookies. Yeah. Hey, Gene, how are you?
I'm fine. Hey, I'm on a newbie here, but I got $2.
Oh.
I got a phone call on Friday morning. And somebody said, hey, your name's in the paper. And I said, oh. Well, I had to go put some shorts on and go out and get the paper. And sorry. President Lloyd, fellow friends, and yeah, how's that? I got that. Yeah. Anyway, turns out my granddaughter is a pitcher for Mark Morris High School. She is a freshman this year, she's 15 years old. She pitched against Tumwater, who was the state champs last year. And it turned out the game went a full 9 innings. They normally play 6, but they were tied up, and McKenzie pitched all 9 innings, struck out 16, and hit a home run over the center field fence. Which Mark Morris won 5-4.
Wow.
Aren't you glad to buy a house across straight from him?
She wouldn't have been able to do that if he hadn't put his shorts on.
Yeah.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests. Here's $1. I got to ride up with Marty and Ken up to Vader on Saturday, and we ate spaghetti dinner, which was pretty good. But we were probably the only 4 in the whole place with my wife and me, and then that didn't win anything.
Oh.
Yeah.
You gotta buy the tickets, Rick.
Where's your participation ribbon?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'll try to find one of those for you.
I got one.
Parker, what do you got going on?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, I've got I don't know why she said $1. A week or so ago, Lion Pat and I had occasion to eat lunch down in Vancouver. And the young lady that waited on us, she noticed my vest and she said, do you know George Moore? Or did you know George Moore? And I said, well, absolutely, same club. But then she asked, did I know Walt Marie Speck?
Oh, no.
And I hesitated a little bit.
Yeah.
And said, yeah, I know Marie. And she says, would you please convey to them that Marie's welcome back there, but Walt isn't.
Yes.
Okay, Lionel.
Yeah.
Let's keep this frivolity rolling.
Yes.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, Sula, are you really gonna try to be a tail twister?
I'm getting sucked into it.
But
I
that's
don't
really
know.
good, you know?
Do
So
I have a choice?
yeah, oh, no choice. I remember the first time I was tail twister, my sponsor said, oh, you're gonna be tail twister next year, and again, what? My happy bucks are for, something that I'll remember any moment now, because it's been a long time. I went and visited Pat and Tom Fulton over hospice. He's not very conversive, but the main reason they put him in hospice is to try to get his electrolytes levels back up. And if they can't, then we all know the rest. And I guess the second happy buck is if Kurt, are you singing in cabaret? Okay, all right, neither am I.
Oh, we'll stay out here with the, hi, Kevin. There you go.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, of course, Maryland stole the thunder on the whole conversation. I don't know if I told anybody that, but my dad played for him back in 50, 59, 60, 61.
Wow.
And played with Frank Burgess for 1 year, which was the leading scorer before Timmy just knocked it down, or at least he was in the top 3 or 4, I think. At any rate, then I'm going down to Reading to watch my son play baseball this weekend, or I would be at the cabaret.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Right on, thanks, like Kevin. Hey, President Lowe, fellow Lions guys, my happy $5 this week is all about our friend, media past president Tom Fulton. Been in contact with Pat Fulton also, and just kind of keeping me apprised. One of the hard things about having good friendships is that they have a finite time frame. The best part of it is living through that point up until.
Yep.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, there's my $5 donation for this week. Ponder something. How many loaves could Rob Lowe rob if Rob Lowe could rob loaves? Really appreciate happy dollar number one, or I guess that's 2 since I wasted that one. But happy dollar number one is the sunshine. Got to go out to work in the yard doing dirt therapy. As Andre knows from being a rose expert, I've got plenty of scratches from trimming up our rose bushes, but had a good time for that. Happy to see Mike and Anita here with us today, and I'll close with the quote of the week, this time from Anne Bradstreet. If we had no winter, the spring would not be so pleasant. If we did not sometimes taste adversity, prosperity would not be so welcome. It'd be similar to what Pat just said. And I believe our guest was a happy buck.
$2, I'm not sure what the protocol is here, but $2 because my alma mater, Fairleigh Dickinson University, pulled off the upset of March Madness by beating Purdue.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, President Lloyd, you know what's on tonight? Japan and the USA, a world championship baseball team.
Yeah.
Anybody saw the game last night? I've got to get back and watch the highlights again. But that night's inning, it will blow you away if you were even kind of like any kind of sports. How about Lion City?
President Lloyd, fellow Lions, I guess. Well, I watch sports, mainly football. It goes in one eye, out the other eye. That's how much I pay attention to it. So any other sports are off. So I have some happy dollars. One is to see Mike and Anita here today. And we've been talking with Keith about our future trip to Texas in May. And he's lined us up where we're gonna need a 5-day fishing license. So, fresh trout. Oh my goodness. And lion tamers, I've mentioned to a couple of you, we need WD-40 for our baskets that spin because they're squeaky.
Oh.
And Katie, congratulations. I saw it on Facebook. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I have a story for you. So I like to shop at Ocean Beach Safeway just because I've been there for over 30 years. I don't have to wander the aisles. So I tell Jim, go and pick up some cabbage at Safeway. He's a Fred Meyer shopper. I told him it's 9 cents a pound, right? He comes back, he goes, well, they only had red and 90 cents a pound was a good deal, right? I go, no. But liars.
Cabbage, she said cabbage.
Yeah.
We're hard to train, Cindy.
Yeah,
But we're loyal.
yeah, but we're loyal, yeah.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, here is my happy dollar that we have a new tail twister.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it does. And I have a sad butt because I miss Iowa.
Yeah.
Just on vacation. Yeah,
Girls are, we gotta stick together.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's why y'all go to the bathroom together.
Oh,
Glenn Lloyd, do you see any reason I shouldn't give the microphone back to you?
I thought we had another one.
No more happy
I'll
butts?
think about
Hey,
it if I
guys, way
recall
to
another
go,
one.
man. This one, today we picked up the budget. I know we're a little short, so
Yeah.
we're working good. President Lloyd, it's all on you, buddy.
All right, we'll turn this over to Mark. He's in charge of our speaker today.
Thank you, President Lloyd. Any in for George Reader, which means the introduction will not be as long as the speech.
Yes.
Andre grew up in a small wooded community just outside of the metro New York area. Earned a degree, as we heard, from Fairleigh Dickinson University. I think I got that pronounced right that time. Master's degree from University of Missouri in journalism. Started working at the Daily News in January of '79. Part of the team that won a Pulitzer Prize for the coverage of Mount St. Helens eruption. Some of us remember that well. He became city editor of TDN in June of 1999 and retired from that position in August of 2020. He's won numerous awards that I'm not going to try to get into and go through. Married to a wonderful person, Paula Stepankowsky, who is also a journalist and teacher, I believe. They have 2 grown children. One of them helps occasionally at St. Vincent de Paul, where I volunteer. He is a rose expert. It wasn't on his list, but I do know from having visited his home on tour of homes for garden homes. I've seen that. I know he works extensively for St. Rose Garden as well. And I had the opportunity to hear him play piano at Martin Powell's memorial, and that was pretty phenomenal as well. So very well-rounded individual. Please give a Lions warm welcome to Andre Stepankowsky.
You hear me without it?
Nope, they can't yeah.
Lloyd, do your job. Hold it for me.
Yeah, it's the only way that people online can hear.
Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, cool. When George asked me to address you folks this afternoon, he gave me a nightmare. Because a writer's nightmare is a lack of focus. So he asked me to say, well, just talk about the war in Ukraine, your efforts at online publishing, and anything else that tickles your fancy. So to try and be kind of coherent about in that way, I think I managed to do that, but I'll let you be the judge. But I'm going to start with my grandfather. My grandfather was a patriot, Ukrainian patriot in the early part of the 20th century. Pretty pivotal role in the early efforts to create a separate Ukrainian state. And the excerpt I'm going to read from his autobiography is about, he was on a prison ship because he was being deported from Russia. And after, I'm not going to go into all the adventures, but he wasn't expected to live through this voyage. And so the ship was called the Dvinsk. It was leaving Archangel in North Russia, and it was bound to goodness knows where. So I'm going to pick up just part of it. Then, a day before I was to be murdered at the bottom of the ship, I heard that we'd passed Iceland. Then, a few hours later, I was told that a British convoy was in sight. God, how I was relieved. I was ready to fall on my knees and pray for the eternal glory of the British sea power. Here they were, British warships, and a number of vessels coming from all sides to place themselves under their protection. A feeling of the presence of authority spread in an instant among those all aboard those on the Dvinsk, both the Serbians who were his captors and the crew. No more lawlessness. The next evening, we put up in a British port. Glasgow, some said, Hull, others said. but it was a British port, there was no doubt. I knew he had worked there for several years. But it was not Glasgow, which I knew from the time of the, but did it matter? I was in England, a dear old England, and especially out of the clutches of these Serbian savages, I quickly made a plan. I knew some English control personnel were bound to come aboard, so I prepared a short speech, which I decided to deliver in English to the first Englishman I saw. Quote, I am in danger of life here. Please take me ashore. I'll explain to you my case without withholding anything. Then you'll do what you think is right. I place my life in your hands, in the hands of an Englishman. What my grandfather was really responding to was that had been in Russia, he'd been all over where there was this chaos reigning at the end of the First World War. And what he was responding to was the fact that there was some law and order here. There was no chaos. And I find it interesting, and my segue into my own life here is that, we're living in a time when I think sometimes the rule of law and public order is in danger of becoming chaotic and compromised. And I think that's one of the things that's continuing to drive me as a journalist, even though I had retired 2 years ago. My grandfather had lived in England for about 7 years prior to World War II, so he spoke English and knew English society well. And so he understood the value of those institutions and cultural forces that kept a society civil and functioning without violence. I was only 4 years old when my grandfather passed away, but I've gotten to know him through his writings. I didn't expect to continue to be so active as a journalist, at least in public, after I retired. I wanted to write my grandfather's autobiography, which I have, but it needs to be annotated. And I wanted to write my own experiences too about Mount St. Helens and how I became a journalist. And I think it's an interesting story. Not as interesting as my grandfather's. I mean, this was a great yarn full of diplomatic intrigue and, famous people and famous characters and brushes with death, like the one I just read about. But again, I didn't intend to be so active after I retired, but the gravity of the challenges that we face in our time really have drawn me back into active journalism and into opinion writing in particular. I mean, I don't feel like I can remain silent when I consider the roots of our democracy, the rule of law, respect for authority, and the obligation of citizens to society are kind of under assault. And when there really is very little editorial leadership and voice of the local community, that Ted Nat, many of you here remember Ted and his views of the news, used to exercise in its community. It was such an important leadership function that I think the community lacks now, and I'm trying to, in my own little way, sort of fill that gap. And I believe that my skills and knowledge of the area's history and my own journalism experience are a valuable asset to the community. So what am I doing? Right after I retired, sorry about this thing. Whatever. Immediately after I retired, I did a column for the paper every other week. But as many of you know, the paper discontinued it in November, this past November. They didn't give me a reason. I have my feelings, and the only thing I'll say about it was not a pleasant phone call. But what I'm doing instead, I'm actually more active. It may have been a blessing in disguise. I'm still writing a column, a monthly column for the Columbia River Reader, which is called Notes from My Lives. And as Mark read, I have many different interests. And it's kind of lighter and sort of ruminating, philosophical, if you will. I also write for the Chinook Observer out at the coast, and through that company also for the Daily Historian from time to time. But the bulk of my effort goes into my online newsletter, which is called Lower Columbia Currents, and I'll hold it up later so you can all subscribe. It's on a thing called Substack.com. I started it in mid-December, and I now have 264 subscribers. It's sort of a funky thing. There's a lot of crackpots that write for it, but there are also a lot of first-rate scholars and writers who write for it, like Heather Scott Richardson, the presidential scholar, and other people who are well-known. So I'm in august company, and I'm in crazy company too, which is kind of suitable, I suppose, for somebody who was in the newspaper industry for so many years. And I can describe it more if you're interested later, but I mean, I write about local stuff. I've written about the county commissioners. I've written about our efforts to get green energy here, the difficulties we faced. I've written about the need for home rule in the county, it's very eclectic and it's a lot of fun. I've written about the struggles that the hospice organization had. That was the story that got a lot of interest. I wrote about anti-Semitic literature that was being circulated in the community. Scooped the paper on that one and a couple of the other ones, kind of felt good. It's satisfying to me on two accounts. One is that I'm still doing it. I love journalism. It's obviously in my veins. And it's a form of new journalism. I mean, I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to worry about advertising. I don't have to worry about the headaches that go into putting out the daily newspapers, whether the reporters are going to meet deadline or not, or whether the headline's going to be written accurately, or whether, it's going to be delivered on time, and all the myriad headaches that you go into, you encounter when you put out a newspaper. And if something is amiss, I'm the only one I can blame, which is a nice thing. And one of the odd things about this is the most, not odd, but it's a reality and a painful one in some ways, is that, most online news ventures are in big cities. There aren't that many in small towns. And that's, small towns are being lost by the newspaper industry. I mean, newspapers are closing left and right all across the country, and it's a huge tragedy because newspapers are what give a community some kind of cohesion. They give community leadership. A community grieves through its newspapers or whatever media outlet you want to talk, but most of the times it's newspapers, and they're closing like crazy. And what's going to substitute for it? A community needs a source of news. I was speaking with a friend of mine named Rick Seifer, who used to be a reporter here. Some of you might remember him. And he lives in Hillsdale, section of Portland, and he says, he just learned that the amount of crime that's going on in that community is just rampant. Just to sum it up, it's probably due to the fentanyl and trank crises. But no one's writing about it. Nobody's even aware that it's going on except for members of the business community. So it's just an important glue to hold the community together. I'm not going to pretend that I can report enough news to serve that function. But I'm, hope that I can at least, provoke thought and discussion about some of the important issues that face our community. Again, my column's very eclectic. Just think of it as a newspaper editorial page. Never deals with the same 2 days in a row generally, although there's maybe from sometimes, some repeat. And I do try to stay local, and I deal with regional issues. I've written a lot about, some of the efforts to get the wind farms off the coast. Obviously affects our coastal communities. There's a lot of opposition to it there. I've written about this Clascanine next gen plant, and basically blasted the environmental community for being so oppositional to anything that smacks of any industrial development in this community. I mean, the people who know me, probably, some people call me Comrade Stepankowsky. Blaming liberal. And, I would acknowledge that I am definitely left of center, but I mean, I have bashed Governor Ridgely, I've bashed the environmentalists, as well as, for whatever. So I try to be even-handed. I don't make any bones about having an opinion. That's part of the whole idea. And of course, to bring it back to Ukraine, I still write about Ukraine every once in a while because it's obviously a subject dear to me because of my own heritage and my grandfather's thoughts. So I'm going to close with some thoughts about the current situation there. This is, Ukraine war is kind of like the old thing about there is irresistible force crashing into the unmovable object. Because on one hand, Ukraine is unmovable. Zelensky, insists on returning of all Ukrainian lands, and his public is with him. But then on the other hand, you have Putin, who is dead set against having an independent Ukraine, and people don't quite understand how long Russia has been trying to dominate Ukraine. I mean, of course, it controlled most of it for a little bit over a century, but the efforts to basically abolish any Ukrainian self-identity or Ukrainian sense of culture has been going on in Russia for 200 years. I mean, the very reason my grandfather was arrested in Russia in the first place in 1908 is he established one of the first presses that was allowed in Ukraine, because you couldn't publish anything in Ukrainian. And there was an edict against. He got arrested. Somebody ratted him out. He got arrested. And he escaped while he was on bail and went to the West. That's how he ended up in England. But going back to the main point here is that Russia has been trying to obliterate Ukraine for centuries. Why? Because they want that land. That land's too valuable, strategically, natural resources wise. In fact, my grandfather wrote a controversial paper back in 1914. It was called The Russian Plot to Seize Galicia. Galicia is part of Ukraine, the Western Ukraine. And because they saw it as a way of eventually becoming able to dominate not only the whole Black Sea, but even eventually take over Constantinople and have free reign right into the Mediterranean. Ukraine is a vastly rich land. It's an intelligent people, and it's got huge resources and strategic location. And Putin understands that Russia's not an empire without Ukraine. And so you've got these forces here fighting these other forces there. So how is this all going to end? I wish I knew the answer to that. But I just a couple random thoughts here on how some forces that could end it or how it might end. Putin is determined as he is, has political problems. Don't believe the polls you hear about what Russian people say about the war. Because if you got a call from a pollster in Russia asking, well, what do you think about the military action or military operation in Ukraine? What were you going to say? Were you going to say it sucks or it's terrible or whatever? No, you're going to just say, oh, it's great, because you don't want to get in trouble. And then, the actions speak for themselves too. I mean, who is he sending into battle? He's sending in crooks. He's sending in people from jail. He's letting the Wagner group do most of the dirty fighting, because the public there doesn't, when they had the first conscription, how many, young men were leaving the country like in droves. And, and some of them were just, they'd show up on the front lines and they'd give themselves up to Ukrainian troops right there and then. There's not as much support for the war in Russia as people in the West are sometimes led to believe. But again, this is becoming a war of attrition, and the problem from Ukraine's point of view is that the war of attrition is largely being fought on its land. It's their power plants that are being destroyed, their cities that are being destroyed, their rail lines that are being destroyed. The infrastructure of a modern economy and a modern way of life is just all being obliterated. And it's hard to continue to fight that way. So they're obviously so dependent on Western aid, American aid. And that's going to have to continue if they're going to hold out. So it'll be interesting to see if whose patience runs out first, the Russian people's or the Western people's. And I hope God we persevere. And that's one of the interesting aspects of this. Now you're seeing, some Republicans at least trying to back off the war. And I wonder what Ronald Reagan would say about that. Because he was such a communist fighter. So it's and in the meantime, some of the Democrats, a friend of mine who is a very, very liberal person, told me the other day, he says, this has made me into a hawk. And so it's interesting how history kind of reverses people's roles here.
Yes.
I read something by a scholar of Russian-Ukrainian relations the other day, that the way he thought this might end is not really end, but end up in some kind of a stalemate that we see like in Korea, where you've got a demilitarized zone, and a ceasefire, but no real resolution to the core issues involved. I don't think there's any interest on Ukraine's part for that right now, and there certainly isn't any interest in Putin's corner either. I think the biggest holdup is going to be Crimea, and Crimea is an interesting case because Ukraine was actually given to Crimea was given to Ukraine by Khrushchev, in I think 1957, and Putin says he must have been drunk when he did it. The historical irony of all of this is that Crimea doesn't really historically belong to either Ukraine or Russia. It belongs to the Turks. The Turks were the vast majority of people there until Stalin moved them all to Siberia in I think the 40s, right after the war. So, I mean, it could be a major sticking point. I think one of the possible resolutions there, if you could ever get the two sides to trust one another, that would be a real tall order, would be to let the Russians have access to Sevastopol's naval facilities and have some kind of a lease, indefinite lease, I mean, there's no trust. There's just hate there. And I think to try and, it's gonna be a very difficult thing to have any type of settlement that relies on the cooperation of one side versus the other. It's gonna have to be something that, both countries are gonna have to kind of be exhausted and to kind of come to some kind of conclusion. I don't think it's gonna happen in the next year. I wish it would. I mean, I have friends over there. I have a good friend who's a minister. I've written about him and his efforts to house refugees, fortunately from the Donbass and the other parts of eastern Ukraine. The flow of them is trickle now, fortunately. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, there are not many people left to evacuate anymore. But it's a tragedy all the way around. We all have to pray that it ends as soon as possible. But it's going to be a long slog. The West has to be willing to help support the bill for it. There's just the two ways about it, because Ukraine can't withstand Russia by itself. So I'll take any questions that you have. Appreciate you listening. Yes, Ken.
Just a comment. People have read the columns or other things. Thank you. Or read any of the programs you presented to us. You have brought the truthfulness to things going on in the world, not only here in our county, with our commissioners and with things taking place, but you give us all the theory and the aspects of something that's really behind the scenes. Things that have taken place. I appreciate you and I thank you very much for the contribution you've made to our community and the people around the world that have read the columns. They are outstanding. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Subscribing is free. You can make a pledge if you want, but it's free. So, any other questions? Well, there must be some.
So, Andre, I want to say, you and I have found each other on opposite side of many spectrums, but the best thing I like about all of your writings for the last 30 years that I'm aware of is that you do find that middle ground for folks, and I'm just thankful for that.
Yeah, I was just, yes, Andre, I was just wondering, going way back to the Pulitzer. Did everybody that worked on that whole project get something? I mean, bare minimum, a plaque saying that you have it or anything like that? It looked like at the time that Tednack got it.
No, the company gave us plaques.
They did,
I mean,
okay,
The Pulitzer Committee gave us the medal.
yeah,
It came with a medal. And for those of you who remember, it's still there. I'm kind of persona non grata down. It was still there about 8 months ago.
yeah,
You know, it was a picture of the volcano. And, you know, and the Pulitzer plaque was right in the middle.
Okay.
The medal rather was there. And then there was a plaque explaining, you know, how we wanted it and stuff. But all the employees involved, the company gave us plaques. which I
That's
have
nice.
one in my home
well, that's
office.
cool.
We went through, you know, about $1,200 champagne that day. And that was a lot in 1981.
I know it.
You also had a couple of hundred employees at that point, didn't you?
Not quite. We had, the Daily News at that point had about 100 employees. But you have to remember too that, the company then, it was when it was owned by the McCollum, that family, we owned the Bellevue Journal American. And that 100 didn't include that, but I'll come back in a minute. And we owned the Port Angeles Daily News, we owned Cable View, which now is Xfinity. And we owned the Printing Arts Center, and we owned the small paper in St. Helens, and then later on, we also owned the Washington Magazine, which had a very 3 or 4 year run.
Right.
So some of the size of the staff of the employment base was due to the fact that it was really basically a small publishing empire in the Northwest. So there were, you know, that we had, you know, we had more people in accounting than we would have needed to if we were just the Daily News.
Yes.
You know, and we had, you know, we had the press crew was bigger than it needed to be because we, you know, we were printing the other, some of the, we were printing, we had a lot of other contract printing jobs too. So, but you know, I mean, but if you want to just look at the newsroom, our newsroom at the time we wanted to cover Mount St. Helens had about 34, 32, 33, 34 employees. I don't remember exactly what it was. Today, I think there are 5 reporters, 1 editor and 1 photographer. And I think there's still 2 layout people, but the paper's not laid out here. I mean, I'm not gonna make any bones about it. Lee Enterprises ownership of this paper has been disastrous.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm gonna, you know, and if they, you know.
Can I quote you
I
on
don't wanna
that?
get into it too much, okay, but I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't, because I support the young kids who work there. You know, they try hard. But they, you know, that's one of the reasons I retired is I couldn't work for the company anymore. I just couldn't take the cuts. Just, you know, and I was down to 5 reporters for a good part of the last part of my tenure as city editor, but you know, with all the experience and the knowledge I had in this community, I could make it work. But the people who were there now don't have the benefit of that, so
Yeah.
it doesn't, you know.
Quick question, along kind of ties into the Mount St. Helens thing, as you're well aware, federal funds were set up and were supposed to be protected for the outflow from Silver Lake County or Spirit Lake County Bridge. That's one of those key issues that nobody's really kind of keeping public tabs of currently. And maybe you are for those, but kind of related to that, what do you do for listening to local news? How do you get your sources? I'm appreciative of KLG's morning report.
Well, I do what any hopefully good journalist will do, is just to call people up and have coffee with them, pick their brains. You know, sometimes read between the lines. You know, I mean, some of the stuff I, you know, play off of stuff that's in the paper. I mean, you know, but the story about the hospice thing, for instance, the paper did a story about the fact that they were selling out part of the operation. But you know, I saw that there was more to that story than was published there, so I built on it. You know, and the story about the woman from Germany Creek who was denied a grant that the state had approved, you know, for her the flood damage. I mean, that story was like this long, and I saw that there was a heck of a lot more there. So sometimes it's just building off of stories and recognizing that there's a lot more to it. Some of it's just staying on top of the news. And there is, since you mentioned Spirit Lake and Mount St. Helens, I have a story I'm working on for next week. I don't want to give too much away yet, but it has to do with where we are with some of the flood control efforts and some bureaucratic resistance to getting the next phase of it done. But it's a big concern for this community, because people forget that the authorization for the Mount St. Helens flood control work was granted for 50 years in 1985. So at the time, it seemed like forever, but 12 years away. And this problem with silt movement up there is going to persist long past. So, the community has to make sure that we can get a lot of this flood control work, front-ended is the right word to use at this point, but get it done before that deadline hits. Because trying to get another project authorized up there right now would be very difficult. Just, I'll stick around. So you guys should be dinner.
As our thank you to our speakers, we have a Pioneer Lions mug and a Lions application. If you choose to add another hat to the dozens or so.
Cheers.
Right on.
Love you.
All right. Marilyn, for announcements.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, I have two announcements. One of them is just a reminder that spring conference is about 6 weeks away. I'd love to see you. I got some information this last week, and I mentioned that Friday night is fun night, dress in your superhero outfit. It actually is a little more to that. It is to wear something that represents our Lions Club super services. So for that, Steve and I decided we would wear bibs, our aprons, and advertise our services quickly. The other thing is past president's meeting for maybe 5 minutes over there in the back, and we'll discuss a couple of things.
I see that Bob Piper spins himself a whole bunch of cotton candy and goes as a cotton candy.
Yeah.
Steve, back, Steve.
President Lloyd, members and guests, so real quickly, we still need some signups for Roar for Reading. Just the afternoon session, we have the morning session. And we need that isn't Monday, April 17th, but let's get a little head start, so give it a shot.
Jane said Greg, sign that up. Greg.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests, a couple quick announcements. Number one, our district governor's got a membership drive going, and anybody that brings a lion in through the conference on it, they're able to be put into a drawing for the Melvin Jones Fellowship. So keep that in mind. And the other, we have thank 4 new members here today. On April 25th, the last Tuesday in April, we're going to have an orientation at our meeting. So I'll give you credit for that. And we're getting everything lined up for that. So keep that in mind.
Here I am again. The SWAT Action Plan Workshop, April 1st. But an added attraction. For those that don't do sweets in the morning, there will also be available biscuits and gravy by donation. So come early and get some.
Yeah.
April 1st, 8:30 to noon. 8:30 is when we'll start the actual work. So you might want to come a little early if you want to get something to eat. Right here, be there.
It is Saturday.
President Lloyd, fellow Lions and guests. Bob Piper and I discussed the weather that we're supposed to be having on Friday. And it's only supposed to be a high of about 40, 44, and it's supposed to be a rainy day. So we made the decision to not start kettle corn this Friday. We're gonna do it the Friday following.
It's just, I know none of us really want to stand out there in 30-degree weather, 35, 40-degree weather in the morning, so. Let everybody know, we will start the week after.
Call all your diabetic friends and call them up, tell them to stay home.
I'll be posting it on Facebook and Pellets County News and everything like I usually do. If you do see it, please share it. I'll have it on my personal page too. Thanks.
Didn't mean to startle you. It's all right, Terry.
Ryan, King Ryan, yes, yeah, real quick, board committee meeting right after the president's meeting, since that's what we'll probably all do anyway.
All right, any, see, that's the last one, Pat? Oh. Okay. Do the ticket here. Okay, a red ticket. 121581. Got a winner?
Better go back to MMA, you got better odds, huh?
But you do get to say, white cake, or some other diabetes, remain for life. Thank you very much. Train them well. Okay, the blue ticket. 751. No, this one starts with a 7 here on this one. 715. Better. 36.
Yes.
74.
Ooh.
One mistake.
Oh, Kevin. Hey, good luck, Kevin. Hope you get it. We're down to 34. Hey, maybe you can start selling insurance. Yeah. Oh, and it was right there too.
You can do it, Kev. You can do it. Come on. Not that one.
Seven states.
Okay, now put the Joker in there.
Okay, Darlene is up.
President Lloyd, Phil Lyons, guests, and the desserts for today are #1 pick, Mike Parker.
Woohoo!
And #2 is Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, you're a double winner.
Consolation prize. Is there green onions?
Yeah. How about gluten-free
We have any other announcements?
muffins?
Okay, don't forget past business meeting and Terry's warrant meeting.
Thank you, gentlemen.
See you later.